The rain battered the windows of the old Victorian house in Seattle's Capitol Hill, each drop a tiny fist pounding against Elias Carter's world. At 18, he stood in the foyer, his heart hammering as his father's voice thundered, "You're no son of mine." The words cut deeper than the storm outside, slicing through the fragile hope Elias had clung to since coming out that morning. It was supposed to be a celebration, his 18th birthday, a milestone. Instead, it became a battlefield. His mother, silent but tear-streaked, clutched a rosary, unable to meet his eyes. His father, Gerald, a towering man with a voice like gravel, had erupted when Elias confessed he was gay. "Get out," Gerald spat, tossing a duffel bag at Elias's feet. "You're not welcome here." The bag landed with a thud, and Elias's world tilted. He was being erased from his own home, or so his father thought. But Elias had a secret, one he'd uncovered just weeks ago while sorting through his late grandmother's papers. The house, this creaking, memory-filled Victorian, was legally his. Grandma Lila, the only one who'd ever truly seen him, had left it to him in her will, signed and notarized, effective on his 18th birthday. He hadn't told anyone, not even his best friend, Maya. The knowledge burned in his chest now, a quiet power beneath the chaos. Elias, a wiry black teenager with sharp cheekbones and eyes that held too much for his age, stood frozen. His father's ultimatum hung in the air, heavy as the damp Seattle night. He could reveal the truth now, could throw the deed in Gerald's face and watch his rage falter. But something stopped him, fear, maybe, or the faint hope that his parents might still love him. Instead, he grabbed the duffel, stuffed with clothes and a few books, and stepped into the rain. The door slammed shut behind him, the sound final, like a gavel. He stood on the porch, soaked in seconds, his breath visible in the chilly air. Capitol Hill buzzed around him, its eclectic streets alive with neon signs and late-night coffee shops. But Elias felt like a ghost. Where would he go? He had no money, no plan, just the weight of rejection and the secret of the house he wasn't ready to claim. He wandered toward Volunteer Park, the duffel dragging at his shoulder. The park was quiet, its towering trees swaying in the storm. He found shelter under a pavilion, its wooden beams offering little warmth. There, sitting on a damp bench, he let the tears come. They mixed with the rain on his face, and he wondered if he'd ever feel like he belonged anywhere again. That's when he heard footsteps. A figure emerged from the shadows, a young man, maybe 25, with tousled dark hair and a warm brown complexion. He wore a hoodie and carried a small umbrella, which he tilted toward Elias. "You look like you could use this," the stranger said, his voice soft but steady, a faint accent curling around the words. Elias blinked, caught off guard. "I'm fine," he lied, his voice hoarse. The man raised an eyebrow, unconvinced. "Nobody's fine sitting alone in a storm like this. I'm Mateo." He extended a hand, his eyes kind but searching. Elias hesitated, then shook it. "Elias," he muttered, unsure why he trusted the stranger enough to share his name. Maybe it was the warmth in Mateo's gaze, or maybe it was just that Elias had nothing left to lose. Mateo sat beside him, close enough to share the umbrella but not so close as to crowd him. "Rough night?" he asked, not pushing but leaving space for Elias to fill. Elias laughed bitterly. "You could say that. Got kicked out of my house. My dad, he didn't take it well when I told him I'm gay." Mateo's face softened, a flicker of understanding crossing his features. "That's heavy. I'm sorry. My folks weren't thrilled either when I came out, but they didn't kick me out. You got somewhere to go." Elias shook his head, the weight of the night pressing harder. "Not really." Mateo studied him for a moment, then stood. "Come on. My place isn't far. You can crash on my couch, at least for tonight. No strings, just a dry place to figure things out. Elias wanted to argue, to say he could handle it, but the cold was seeping into his bones, and Mateo's offer felt like a lifeline. He nodded, grabbing his bag, and followed Mateo through the rain-soaked streets. Mateo's apartment was a small, cluttered space above a bookstore on Broadway. The walls were lined with colorful posters, local bands, art exhibits, a pride flag pinned proudly above the couch. It smelled of coffee and old books, and for the first time that night, Elias felt a sliver of safety. Mateo handed him a towel and a mug of tea, then sat across from him, not pressing for details but listening when Elias started to talk. He told Mateo about the fight, about his father's rage and his mother's silence. He didn't mention the house, not yet. Felt too big, too unreal. Mateo listened, his dark eyes steady, offering no judgment, only presence. When Elias finished, Mateo leaned back, thoughtful. You're stronger than you know, Elias. Surviving a night like this? That's no small thing. Elias didn't feel strong. He felt broken, like a puzzle missing half its pieces. But Mateo's words were a spark, faint but real, in the dark of his heart. As he curled up on the couch that night, wrapped in a borrowed blanket, he wondered if this stranger might become something more. A friend, maybe, or something he wasn't ready to name. The next morning, sunlight streamed through the apartment's small windows, painting the room in gold. Elias woke to the sound of Mateo humming in the kitchen, making pancakes. It was such a normal, human sound that it almost hurt. Over breakfast, Mateo told Elias about his life, how he'd moved to Seattle from New Mexico to study art, how he worked at the bookstore downstairs to pay rent. He was 25, openly bisexual, and had a quiet confidence that Elias envied. You don't have to decide everything today, Mateo said, sliding a plate of pancakes toward Elias. But you can't stay out in the rain forever. What's your next move? Elias stared at his plate, the secret of the house burning in his mind. He could go back, could claim what was his. But the thought of facing his parents, of standing in that foyer again, made his stomach twist. I don't know, he admitted. I need time. Mateo nodded, no pressure in his gaze. Time's something you've got. And hey, if you need a place to crash for a bit, my couch is yours. Elias smiled, small but genuine. For the first time in hours, he felt like he wasn't alone. But deep down, he knew he couldn't hide forever. The house was his, and with it came a choice, to run or to fight for what was rightfully his. Elias spent the next few days on Mateo's couch, each morning waking to the smell of coffee and the sound of Mateo sketching at the small kitchen table. The apartment was a haven, but it wasn't home. Not yet. Elias's thoughts kept drifting to the Victorian on Capitol Hill, its steep gables and stained glass windows calling to him like a half-forgotten dream. He hadn't told Mateo about the house, though the secret gnawed at him. Trust was hard when your own family had turned you away. Mateo, for his part, was patient. He didn't push Elias to talk, but he filled the silence with stories about his art, his chaotic family back in Albuquerque, the time he got kicked out of a gallery for sneaking in a protest piece about queer rights. Elias listened, drawn to Mateo's fire, his unapologetic way of existing. It was a stark contrast to the shame Elias carried, a weight he hadn't yet learned to shed. On the fourth day, Elias borrowed Mateo's laptop to check his email. Among the spam was a message from his mother. Subject line, "Please." His heart lurched. He opened it, expecting an apology, a plea to come home. Instead, it was a curt note. "Your things are in the garage. Pick them up by Friday or they're gone." No warmth, no regret, just another door closing. Elias slammed the laptop shut, his breath ragged. Mateo looked up from his sketchpad, concern flickering in his eyes. "You okay?" They're done with me, Elias said, voice breaking. My mom, she doesn't even care. Mateo set his pencil down and moved to sit beside Elias. That's on them, not you. You don't need their approval to be who you are. Elias wanted to believe him, but the rejection stung like salt in a wound. He told Mateo about the email, and then, almost without meaning to, the truth about the house spilled out. It's mine, he said, voice barely above a whisper. My grandma left it to me. They don't even know. Mateo's eyes widened, but he didn't interrupt. When Elias finished, Mateo let out a low whistle. That's wild. So what's stopping you from going back? It's your house. Elias stared at the floor. I don't know if I'm ready to face them. What if they hate me even more? Mateo reached out, his hand resting lightly on Elias's shoulder. They don't get to define you. That house? It's yours. You don't have to fight them today, but you can't let them take that from you, too. The words lit something in Elias, a flicker of defiance. He wasn't ready to march back and claim the house, but he couldn't keep running either. That afternoon, he and Mateo walked to the Victorian to retrieve his things from the garage. The rain had stopped, leaving the air crisp and the streets glistening. As they approached the house, Elias's chest tightened. The familiar porch, the ivy climbing the walls, it was his, but it felt like enemy territory. The garage door was unlocked, his belongings piled carelessly in a corner. Books, clothes, a cracked photo frame holding a picture of him and Grandma Lila. Elias knelt, touching the frame, memories flooding back. Her warm laugh, her stories of fighting for civil rights in the 60s. She'd always told him he was enough, just as he was. Mateo helped him pack the items into a borrowed backpack. As they worked, a car pulled into the driveway. Elias froze. It was his father. Gerald stepped out, his face a mask of irritation. What are you doing here? He demanded. Elias's mouth went dry, but Mateo stepped forward, calm but firm. He's picking up his stuff, like the email said. Gerald's eyes narrowed, flicking between them. And who are you? Mateo. A friend. The word carried weight, and Elias felt a rush of gratitude. Gerald scoffed. You've got 10 minutes. Then I don't want to see you here again. Elias wanted to scream that this was his house, that Gerald had no right to order him around. But the words stuck in his throat. He and Mateo grabbed the last of his things and left, the weight of his father's glare heavy on his back. Back at the apartment, Elias felt both lighter and heavier. He had his belongings, but the encounter had reopened the wound. That night, Mateo suggested they go to a local queer community center he knew, a place where Elias might find support. Reluctantly, Elias agreed. The center, tucked in a converted warehouse in Fremont, was warm and bustling. People of all ages and identities mingled, sharing stories and laughter. Elias felt out of place at first, but a volunteer named Aisha, a trans woman with a bright smile, welcomed him. She introduced him to a support group for young queer people, and for the first time, Elias heard stories that echoed his own: rejection, resilience, hope. One speaker, a non-binary person named Riley, talked about reclaiming their life after being disowned. You don't have to forgive them, Riley said, but you do have to choose yourself. The words hit Elias hard, stirring the spark Mateo had ignited. That night, back at Mateo's, Elias couldn't sleep. He kept thinking about the house, about Grandma Lila's belief in him. He wasn't ready to confront his parents, but he was starting to see a path forward, one where he could claim his place in the world, not as their son, but as himself. Weeks passed, and Elias settled into a fragile rhythm. He stayed with Mateo, helping at the bookstore to earn his keep. The work was simple, sorting books, ringing up customers, but it gave him purpose. Mateo's presence was a quiet anchor, his easy humor and late-night talks pulling Elias back from the edge of despair. Yet the house loomed in his mind, a puzzle he hadn't solved. One evening, while shelving books, Elias overheard a customer mention a legal clinic for queer youth. His ears perked up. If he was going to claim the house, he needed to understand his rights. He jotted down the details and, the next day, visited the clinic in Belltown. There, a lawyer named Priya, a sharp-witted woman in her 30s, reviewed Grandma Lila's will. "It's airtight," Priya said, scanning the document. "The house is yours, effective on your 18th birthday. Your parents have no legal claim." Elias's heart raced. "So I could just go back?" Priya nodded. "You could. But if they're still living there, it's complicated. You'd need to serve them an eviction notice, which could get messy. Do you want to pursue that?" Elias wasn't sure. The idea of forcing his parents out felt both empowering and terrifying. He thanked Priya and left, her card tucked in his pocket. On the walk back to Capitol Hill, he stopped at Volunteer Park, sitting on the same bench where he'd met Mateo. The memory of that night, Mateo's umbrella, his steady voice, brought a warmth that startled him. He was starting to care about Mateo, more than he'd expected. When he told Mateo about the clinic, Mateo grinned. "That's huge, Elias. You're figuring it out. Whatever you decide, I've got your back." Elias's cheeks warmed. "Why are you so nice to me? You barely know me." Mateo shrugged, but his eyes were serious. "I know what it's like to feel like you don't belong. And I like you. You've got this fire in you, even if you don't see it yet." The words hung between them, charged with possibility. Elias wanted to say something back, to name the feeling growing in his chest, but fear held him back. Instead, he changed the subject, asking Mateo about his latest art project, a mural for the community center. Mateo's face lit up, and they spent the evening sketching ideas together, their hands brushing as they passed pencils back and forth. The next week, Elias returned to the community center for another support group meeting. This time he shared his story, haltingly at first, then with growing confidence. The group listened, their nods and murmurs a balm to his wounds. Aisha, the volunteer, pulled him aside after. "You're not alone in this, Elias. If you need help, legal, emotional, anything, we're here." Emboldened, Elias decided to visit the house again. He didn't tell Mateo, wanting to face it alone. He stood across the street, watching the familiar windows. A light was on in the living room, and he could see his mother moving inside. His heart ached. For her, for the family they'd been. But then he saw his father's car in the driveway, and the ache turned to anger. This was his house. Why was he the one hiding? He didn't go inside. Instead, he called Priya and asked her to prepare the eviction notice. It was a step, not a solution, but it felt like reclaiming a piece of himself. When he told Mateo later, Mateo pulled him into a hug, fierce and warm. "That's my guy," he said, and Elias's heart stuttered at the words. Their friendship deepened, laced with moments that felt like more. A shared laugh over coffee, a lingering glance during a movie night. Elias wasn't ready to name it, but he felt it, a pull toward Mateo that was both thrilling and terrifying. He was still healing, still learning to trust himself, but Mateo's presence made it easier to breathe. Then, a letter arrived from his father. It was hand-delivered to the bookstore, addressed to Elias in Gerald's sharp handwriting. Elias's hands shook as he opened it. Inside was a single page. "We're moving out. The house is yours. Don't contact us." No apology, no explanation, just cold finality. Elias should have felt triumphant, but instead he felt hollow. The house was his, but at what cost? He showed the letter to Mateo, who read it silently, then set it down. "This doesn't change who you are," Mateo said. "You're still Elias. And you're still enough." That night, they sat on the rooftop of Mateo's building, the Seattle skyline glittering below. Elias leaned against Mateo, their shoulders touching, and for the first time in weeks, he felt a spark of hope. The house was his, but maybe home was something he could build, here with Mateo, with the community he was finding. The fight wasn't over, but he wasn't alone anymore. Elias stood in the foyer of the Victorian house. The eviction notice served, his parents gone. The silence was deafening. No shouting, no tears, just the creak of the old floorboards under his feet. He'd won legally, but the victory felt empty. The house smelled of his childhood, lavender from his mother's candles, the faint tang of his father's aftershave, but it no longer felt like home. Mateo had come with him, standing quietly by the door. "You okay?" he asked, his voice a soft anchor. Elias nodded, though he wasn't sure. "It's weird. This is mine, but it feels like it belongs to someone else." Mateo stepped closer, his hand brushing Elias's. "It's yours to make new memories in. You get to decide what this place means now." Elias looked at him, the words sinking in. Mateo was right. He could redefine this space, fill it with love instead of pain. But first, he needed to face the ghosts. He wandered the house, touching familiar objects. The dining table where he'd done homework, the staircase where he'd tripped as a kid. In his old bedroom, he found a note from his mother taped to the mirror. "I'm sorry." 2 words, not enough, but they cracked something open in him. He didn't cry. Instead, he felt a quiet resolve. He wasn't ready to forgive, but he could move forward. Back downstairs, he found Mateo in the kitchen, inspecting the ancient stove with a grin. "This thing's a relic," Mateo said. "You could turn this place into something amazing, you know? A home, a studio, a community space." The idea sparked something in Elias. A community space, somewhere for people like him, like the folks at the center. He shared the thought with Mateo, who lit up. "That's perfect. You've got the space, the heart. Let's make it happen." Over the next few weeks, Elias and Mateo worked to transform the house. They painted walls, fixed creaky floors, and hung art, some of Mateo's, some donated by friends from the community center. Aisha and Riley helped, bringing energy and ideas. The house began to feel alive again, filled with laughter and purpose. Elias applied for a grant through the community center to fund the project, and to his shock, it was approved. But the work wasn't easy. Elias wrestled with memories of his parents' rejection, the pain resurfacing with every change he made to the house. One night, exhausted from painting, he broke down, telling Mateo how much it hurt to erase their presence. Mateo listened, then pulled him close, their foreheads touching. "You're not erasing them," he said. "You're building something new, something better." Elias's breath caught. Mateo's closeness, his unwavering support. It was more than friendship now. He wanted to say it, to name the love growing between them, but fear still lingered. What if he lost this too? The community center hosted a planning meeting for the house, now dubbed Lila's Haven, in honor of Elias's grandmother. The group brainstormed art classes, support groups, a library for queer youth. Elias felt a surge of pride, but also pressure. Could he really do this? He was only 18, still figuring out who he was. One evening, as they hung fairy lights in the backyard, Mateo turned to Elias, his eyes bright. "You're doing something incredible, you know that? This place, it's going to save people." Elias blushed, ducking his head. "I'm just trying to make it mean something." "It already does," Mateo said, stepping closer. Their hands brushed, and this time Elias didn't pull away. They stood there, the air charged, until Mateo leaned in, his lips brushing Elias's in a tentative, electric kiss. Elias froze, then melted into it, his heart racing with a joy he hadn't known was possible. When they pulled back, Mateo grinned. "Been wanting to do that for a while." Elias laughed, breathless. "Me too." The kiss marked a turning point. Elias felt bolder, not just in love but in claiming his life. He and Mateo grew closer, their relationship a quiet strength as they worked on Lila's haven. But challenges loomed. A neighbor complained about the queer agenda of the community space, and Elias received an anonymous letter threatening to shut it down. Fear crept back, but so did his resolve. This was his house, his life, and he wouldn't let anyone take it from him again. Lila's haven opened on a crisp autumn evening, the Victorian house glowing with warmth. Fairy lights twinkled in the backyard, and inside, the rooms buzzed with people. Queer youth, allies, community leaders. Elias stood at the entrance, welcoming guests, his heart full but nervous. This was his dream, his grandmother's legacy, but the threats lingered in his mind. He'd reported the letter to the police, but no leads had surfaced. Mateo was by his side. As always, his presence a steadying force. They'd been together officially for a month now, their relationship a bright spot in the chaos. Mateo squeezed Elias's hand as Aisha took the stage, a makeshift platform in the living room, to speak. "This house," she said, "is a testament to resilience, to Elias, who turned pain into purpose." The crowd cheered, and Elias felt tears prick his eyes. He looked at Mateo, who mouthed, "You did this." The moment was perfect until it wasn't. A crash came from the backyard. Elias rushed outside, heart pounding, to find a group of teenagers spray-painting slurs on the fence. The crowd followed, gasps and murmurs filling the air. Mateo grabbed Elias's arm, pulling him back, but Elias shook him off. "This is my house," he said, voice steady despite the fear. He confronted the teens, who scattered when they saw the crowd. The damage was minimal, but it shook Elias. This was supposed to be a safe space, yet hate had found its way here. Aisha and Riley helped clean the fence, and the opening continued, but the mood was heavier. Later, as guests left, Mateo pulled Elias aside. "You can't let this stop you. Those kids, they're scared just like you were. This place matters because of that." Elias nodded, but doubt gnawed at him. Could he keep this up? The next day, he and Mateo met with Priya, who suggested hiring security and installing cameras. The grant money would cover it, but Elias hated that it was necessary. Still, he agreed, determined to protect Lila's haven. Over the next months, the house thrived. Support groups met weekly, art classes filled the rooms with color, and queer youth found a place to belong. Elias grew into his role, his confidence bolstered by Mateo's love and the community's support. But the threats didn't stop. More letters, more vandalism. Each one tested Elias's resolve, but each one also strengthened it. One evening, as he and Mateo sat on the rooftop, the city sprawling below, Elias opened up. "I'm scared," he admitted. "What if this is too much? What if I fail?" Mateo took his hand, his eyes fierce. "You won't. You're building something bigger than you, Elias. And you're not alone." Elias looked at him, the man who'd become his home. "I love you," he said, the words spilling out, raw and true. Mateo's smile was radiant. "I love you too." The moment was a quiet victory, a promise that love could endure. Lila's haven wasn't just a house. It was a symbol of what Elias had fought for. A life where he could be himself, unapologetically. The threats would come, the pain would linger, but so would the hope. He'd been kicked out on his 18th birthday, but he'd reclaimed his place in the world. And with Mateo, with the community, he'd built something even greater. A home where love always won.